wobble.
Can't wobble.
Okay.
I think the highest level pro drivers on planet Earth would tell you there's a time and a place for both, but you're completely correct. That is locked in, and if the if the conditions allow for it and the trimmers are doing their job and the boat's set up right, there's no doubt that's the fastest way to go. But how about that body drag?
You send me that slide, I'll send
Here's
it
another
today.
one.
No, I'll tell you something.
When it's real light, we get harped on about this by the coach.
We
but,
get yelled at all the time. Yeah.
If it's real light and we're in the boat, get the weight low, get it behind the cabin house. If you're standing inside the cabin house, what's the rule? Can you go downstairs?
Yes.
Your shoulders have to be above.
Shoulders above. So as long as you're, like, you can keep your chicken wings on the side there. Get really low. Try to keep, like, Will would probably be yelled at for being in or near the slot where the air is coming off the jib. But low behind the cabin house and out of the wind, in line, hiding behind each other, hiding behind the cabin house.
Opposite style.
Opposite style.
But hold on, I think the thing that's, to me, the bigger thing in this photo is how far forward Zeke is sitting. This is, again, really light air. This is probably 5-6 knots, very Chesapeake light. Main trimmer is in line with the jib sheets. Get the back end of the boat out of the water, like forward.
So, let me ask a question about that, because that's a really good point. Now you've got 3 people forward and you've got 1 person sitting back by the traveler.
They can't
now
move.
you've got but now don't you kind of exacerbate that seesaw because you're putting the weight on either sides?
Not necessarily, because I think what you're doing is getting the back end of the boat out of the water, which is good. And I also think having kind of a clump of the weight over the keel, which is basically where we're sitting, is quite good. And the other thing I like about this personally, I think the worst thing you can do is have people on the leeward deck. I'd rather have everyone crowded towards the middle of the boat than having like the teeter-totter.
So you're not the seaside this way.
I think you having concentrated in the middle. I bet you their next move would be that one of them would get in the hatch, and then the next one would basically go over the leeward, right?
Yeah, it would be someone. Will would go into the hatch, and then I would come onto the floor, and I would crouch now right up against the cabin house on the windward side.
And Zach would probably move to where
Will
is, and everything would get concentrated in the middle of the boat, because the driver can only do what they can do, but it's forward low. But the last resort is people sitting to leeward in the lounge chair. I like to call where you sit down there and sit on the lifelines. That's
how you sail in.
That's so nice.
Right. That's like
there's a better place than that that not everybody can fit. But if you can fit, we would actually send, and Will can barely fit, but he'll go lay here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Legs forward.
Yeah.
I think it's legs back. I've done it a couple times. I think it's legs back, twisted outboard, so your knees are kind of like over the leeward side, and you're kind of on your shoulder there, looking to leeward.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
That'll make you quit sailing. Don't.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. It's usually in the shade.
But I think the key here is the very Annapolis-esque position, but it's way forward and center. I think that's the key.
And hiding. Air drag. Air drag. All right, Alan, you're up.
Go for it. I mean, so this was in Miami last week, but I think a couple of things here to me was the heel angle, right? Feet just above the water.
Yep.
And if you look, helm was in the middle, and the backstay to be, the big one for this was backstay against in the middle of the range. He has room to ease, and he's got room to come on. And the biggest thing like my biggest pet peeve in this is not having the gross set right so you can't adjust the backstay. Because it's everything. You have to be able to pull it on in the puffs, and you have to be able to ease it off to get the jib power.
What's the breeze there?
Probably 15, 12, 15. I mean, they're not fully hiking. Clearly, the jib trimmer is not fully pressed out on the, but you know, again, steady helm, heel angle right. And I think the other thing for me as a driver that I would be looking at, so you know, you're looking at the telltales, which are here, but this head stay to kind of land angle, I think is something you should always be watching. You're kind of watching kind of the horizon, and you don't need to really look at the heel angle indicator the whole time. Just keep the head stay steady with the horizon, and kind of, you know, I think the good thing about this too is you can see like the painting and stuff, right? So it's pretty easy to not, you know, I think the worst thing happens when the bow starts wandering.
Yeah.
When you've got land like that, just kind of lock in, get your heel angle locked, and then you can see when you're, so that way when you at least tack to open water, you have a better feel for it, but it's pretty good. I think if you're driving, a pretty good, you know, tip. I mean, you can see Laura's looking, I mean, she's basically looking, telltale here, I mean, her head angle is basically showing she's looking low, right? She's just kind of watching her heel angle and watching the water, and they're going along pretty good there.
picking a line site's not just for starting.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to it, just to keep the boat steady. I mean, when the boat is going steady is when it's going the fastest. And I think this photo shows that pretty well. And, you know, the Traveler's still to windward, it's pretty breezy, but you can see the boom is just to leeward. Right, I mean, so there's a fair amount of twist. If you drop the Traveler, you might have to trim so hard to keep the boat heeled, there wouldn't be enough. It's kind of like the backstay. You want the Traveler to range where if you need to trim, you have room to, but if you ease, you don't lose everything. Kind of the same, similar.
They look very comfortable.
Right,
That's what you're
yeah,
saying.
exactly
They're
right.
not working very hard, so they're probably going fast.
Right.
So are they steering through the lifts and the headers, or are they kind of picking the middle?
I think she's still steering through it. I mean, but it's not huge adjustments. I mean, yes, if it's a 20-degree shift, you're gonna have to make a pretty radical adjustment. But no, she's just steering enough to keep the heel angle. And, you know, Taylor's probably telling her, all right, you know, a lifting puff coming on. So if the boat heels over, you might ease the main sheet and help the boat, you know, let her round the boat up and do whatever needs to be done. But
Weren't you guys just having an in-depth conversation on that? Where Rory would like tell you, that he'd like see a puff coming and be like, I'm not easing in this one
Yeah.
for years.
Right.
Yeah, which is like
Vice
completely
versa.
the
Or vice
opposite
versa.
of
Right.
what Jackson would do, but yeah, my main trimmer last week would make me steer the boat into
More.
the puffs more, as opposed to like adjusting the sails more. He was like, you drive the boat up, and if we get to the point where you're driving the boat up and we're still heeled, he's like, then I will adjust the main. But I was doing more driving than I would normally do.
Did you like it? Was it better, or would you go back?
Well, I bet it depends.
I can't say that quite yet. It was just really different. And when we did the sail testing, I had the pleasure of having Rory trim the main, Zeke trim the main for a little bit, and then the guy that trims the main on the Eat Sleep J Repeat, Elliot. And it was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They were all like, Zeke moves the main a lot. He makes a lot of adjustments. Rory makes barely any, and Elliot was like right in the middle. And so depending on how you drive the boat, you can make the boat go just as fast. But it was an eye opener for me, for sure.
What that made me think about when Kate was telling me about that talk with Rory is how, like racing versus tuning is a big part of this as well, and where you are on the race course. If you're got somebody tight on your lee bow and you want to keep going straight for the rest of the beat, you would love to just put the bow up. Even if you heel a little bit too much for a short puff, you might just be like, all right, I'm not easing on this one. We're going to take the height. We might slide back half a length, but we'll take the height because we want to live here forever, and it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
If it's the opposite, if you're the boat to leeward maybe and it's all starboard tack and you want to keep going, you might say, I'm easing the main, do not drive up in this one. We're going to take every inch of this forward for every tenth of a knot you can get.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think a lot of
it
this.
depends.
Well, a lot of this communication though, it has to be a working.
And it has to, exactly.
Talking about steering the heel off or trimming the heel off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and flat water versus waves as well. It's dead flat water, take it all high, because you're not going to slow down if you get too thin. It's real choppy, you got to ease and stay low fast. Come on this one.
Yeah, you can go on. This is again kind of another similar photo, but I think the good part about this one that I saw is if you look at the profile of both sails, they're pretty
Similar.
even. The other thing, it just looks like a nice sailing day, so.
Just beautiful.
It's actually really great sailing.
What's that?
You actually looked around and see what's outside.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's pretty nice out, but I think a couple things here is like, that's a good judge to me of what a normal heel would look like, is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing, if you look again, Traveler pretty high, main sheet pretty easy, and if you look, they're not quite as in-hauled and sheeties, but the sails look the same, like their spreader marks are here. Again, pretty far outside, but it was a little choppy that day, and they were just looking through the
And I would
house.
say like, so Elliot, the first thing, who's trimming the main here, the first thing he said when he came on our boat, he was like, you want to steer to 14 degrees heel. He was like, that's what we're going for. He was like, I'll adjust around that, you steer to 14 degrees. Whereas like Rory was like, steer up, you steer down, whatever. But he, like, so that boat was probably sailing at 14 degrees heel. Just saying.
What do you guys use as a
Forward
heeling
through
boat?
our shoulders in line with the breeze.
I have a
Yeah,
B&G.
They're in
Look at
line
Charlie.
with Reese.
The B&G
Yeah,
has a
but that's their
center.
tactician. He could easily
Yeah,
just
so
be
does,
sitting this way with his head
Carl's.
straight, but he's like
Right.
this, trying to look for the wind.
And I think the
Yeah,
other thing again.
I was looking
like,
at
yeah.
manual.
Same thing again,
Bubble.
backstays in the middle of the range, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's all these kind of,
The
I also
Home Depot
think it's
special
nice,
just
big
sticking on there.
jib. Can't see any light getting underneath the bottom of it,
Huh?
right up against the cabin house.
Right.
yeah, looking from the front this time. So I think, you know, again, a couple things that you can't necessarily see this from the boat, but, you know, you can see a little bit here is the boat on the left, more headstay sag, right? You can see it quite a bit from the line. But then probably has the
Yellow
ease.
line.
The line is a yellow line, which is
Okay.
almost impossible to see.
Yeah, you probably see it better in the, on the
Close
computer,
view.
which we sent you, but
Can't see it.
just,
Oh, yeah.
you know, seeing how far the headstay is to leeward from the mast.
Zeke.
And you can see it's kind of just changing from
Zeke.
softer,
Grab a meter stick.
yeah, I mean, softer,
Okay.
tighter. That is how the jib gets trimmed.
See one?
Yeah.
The other thing I took away from this photo is,
I mean, I see
How-
boat left has, looks like the jib is outside of the tow
it is,
rail.
and that's more because the headstay's softer, right? So if the headstay gets softer, the jib gets fuller, you get leach return, you end up having ease, right? I
Okay.
think the other thing that's interesting, I find pretty interesting, is how all three boats are in the photo at the same time. I mean, the heel angles are ridiculously similar.
Yeah.
I mean,
I thought it was the same boat, to be honest.
it's not, it's
Yeah.
three different boats. I
Can
mean,
you
they're
guys see
all
the luff of the jib compared to the main, or is that hard to see too?
pretty hard to see.
That's
I mean, we can send this photo to you just so you guys can
So
see
that's
it,
the judge.
So
That's
what's
probably.
faster?
but, I mean,
Yeah,
it depends. I think, no, I think what's faster is making sure that your relationship between the sheet and the headstay
Work the same.
right. I mean, if you trim the jib as hard as the boat on the right, the left and the right trim the same with different headstay sag, one would be clearly slower, right? So it's just making sure that your leach proportion is the same to the headstay. So if you have a softer headstay, you have to have the leach out further. It's just the way the sail is shaped. If you have a straighter headstay, you can bring it in more. But my guess is, if we measure these sails, the jib on the left is definitely fuller. It's got more headstay sag, it's just a fuller sail. The one on the right is probably flatter. And it could be a function of backstay being off.
That's what I was gonna say.
And
This
this,
could
the
be
other
main
thing, you
sheet
look
back
like,
there.
so like the main leach on this boat is definitely tighter, right, than this
Yeah.
one?
Right?
So this boat could just have the backstay on, that's why the headstay's tighter, it's just open lane, open main.
Backstay tighter
Backstay on.
tightens the.
Backstay on tightens the headstay, which goes to your thing, so like you said in puff, you pull the backstay on, right? So then you'll make main twisty,
Right?
jib flat, because the headstay gets tighter. Whereas if the backstay's off, it's tighter leach main, fuller jib. The reason why I really like this one is how the heel angles are almost identical.
Yeah.
I mean,
So they're all driving to the heel.
Rig tension also dramatically affects your headstay tension.
Do you think everybody had different rig tension?
no, on this day when we were out testing, we made sure all three boats had identical rigs. So we set all of them up at the exact same tension, the exact same pre-bend, and all three boats had the exact same sails when we did this, just so we could work on the trimming, body placement, tuning, not tuning, trimming, steering techniques to figure out what was the faster in this situation. In the end, we basically did like 7 runs, and it oddly wasn't that different. It was more of just making sure that you weren't wildly outside the range. The ranges kept getting closer and closer and closer as we did it. But
The ranges of the speed.
the trim and the speed got closer as we went along.
Right.
Basically because as everyone got the heel angles under control, no matter how they did it, as soon as everyone got their heel angles under control, the boats went almost the same speed. When the tests were bad is when some boat either, there was a weird wind shift, but when one of the boats got wildly heel angle out of control, even for 10 seconds, they fell out. It was all that heel angle. It was my takeaway. I don't know what Zeke's takeaway was, but it didn't matter how you did
But I
it.
see that, I mean, the 2 out of the 3 jib, I was always looking at the tow rail and kind of trying to use that as a judge. And it seems like it's all outside of the tow rail.
Well, the thing, like, you look here at the jib, right? So if you look on this boat, the jib and the main leach at the spreader is almost touching.
Right?
If you look here, the jib is way inside the main leach, right?
Yep.
Same thing here.
Right?
And I think that's a function of this boat, the head stays softer, so the whole jib slid out the rib, got fuller and had to come out.
Right.
Whereas these two, as the head stay pulled in, the whole jib got sucked into the boat. So flatter sail, they had to trim harder, right? Like we talked about before. Fuller sails are twistier, so you gotta ease them out. Flatter sails, you trim harder. This is a pretty good representation of that. Because if you look, flatter jib, trim harder. Probably then, if the bag stays, whatever, they might have had to trim the main slightly different, but this for
The
sure
main
shows fuller jib, jib out. Just can't trim it as hard.
Are you saying they're all equal speed?
I mean,
looks
close
like-
enough that if you were racing, you would have been able to win a race if you did the shifts right. You know, they were within, I mean, we'd sail for 6 minutes in a straight line and they'd come back and say, boat 27 gained half a length. And you're like, half a length over 6 minutes? It wasn't like you started going and one boat fell out right away. It was pretty thick.
And you have to remember too, so this is what we call like tank testing. There's no other boats, there's not a lot of waves. This is just trying to learn top end speed stuff. It's not that hard to get any setup to hit top end speed. You can get there many different ways.
Right.
Keeping it close to there
Is
in
the key.
traffic, in wind shifts, in getting tacked on, that's the name of the game, and that's what we're trying to learn how to
Find
achieve
that.
better than everybody else. Any setup can get, the limiting factor is the shape of the boat and the dimensions and the air drag and all that stuff. You can only go this fast. You can get that fast a lot of different ways, but staying at 95% of that speed for an entire race, that's what we're trying to figure out how to do. And that's the gear shifting and understanding what your sail controls do, how the heel angle affects that, etc.
Right. I mean, in this test, I remember I was on the boat on the left with Kate and Rory. I mean, Rory's whole thing was that he wanted to get the sails as full, the jib as full as he could, and live in the lane as long as he could, like by easing the backstay. Everything he wanted was, let's see how full we can make the jib and last as long as we can. Saying because if we got in a racing situation, if it got choppy, it might be more forgiving. Kind of what Zeke was saying. So I remember our goal here was trying to ease and power up the jib as much and find that breaking point where the boat fell kind of off the cliff, which we did a couple times. The boat, we eased it higher, we eased the sheet too much, and the boat just wouldn't go. And it was just kind of trying to find that balance of where the end of it is. And I mean, you definitely can find it. If I had oversheeted the jib by a little bit here where the head stays soft like that, we would have went right out the back. So it was probably a less quote unquote forgiving for the trimmer, but it might have been easier for the driver. There's a trade-off a little bit. This is the same thing from behind, but you can kind of see the whole difference of backstay on main sheet tension relationship, whereas the boat on the left, you can see the main is dramatically tighter. You can also see the boat's heeling more. Right, so they just added more load to the back of the boat, right? If you look. Straight helm, pushing, pushing. Right, main is twistier on both, pushing. Boat to the left, straight or even almost pulling a little bit.
Yeah.
So just understanding, and then maybe
Wow.
not as fast, but you can see the difference, right? It might just be a little backstay ease on one of the other two boats or main sheet tension on. But finding that helm balance is just enough to change that helm kind of view a little bit. The other thing, like you can see here too, right? Again, small differences. Jib is in line with the main, jib way outside, right? Jib way inside, right? The boats are pretty radically different here. And I mean, I don't remember who won the lineup, but for sure it was a balance. The boats were, which one was in balance, which one was out, right? I mean, I would make an argument, like this boat, these two boats, the mains are pretty similar, right? But this one, the jib's further out. She's pushing. This boat, jib's in, main's out, pushing, right? So somewhere there's a balance between the three boats that kind of finds the happy place, but you can kind of see it in a very visual way. So, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. What do you think, Zeke?
Yeah, it was good. I'm remembering this test now because to like the first question about the European boats, we set all the jib cars the same.
Right.
And the boat on the right is the European boat, and they were like, you told us to put it there, so we did, but did not work. And you can see it in this picture. I think that's what Allan was noticing, is that they're at that same setting, their car was much further forward relative to the boats on the left. So their jib the leach is just further inboard.
So
Something you wanna check too is, and I told you guys, their jib track is on backwards
Yes.
compared to everybody else.
Um,
So it's
yeah,
something
so-
you wanna look at on your boat to know.
Well, so the one thing we know about the US boats, that's why we say it's from behind the first screw. So if you look at some of them, the first screw, there's 2 holes in front, and there's some boats it's 1. But we know when they made the American boats, they had like a press that put all the track holes in, and the guys put the tracks on backwards for some of them.
Yeah.
So that's why we gauge everything off the distance
First
behind the
screw.
first screw.
Okay.
Because that's the uniform measurement. If you measure from the bow back to the first screw on every boat, it's exactly the same. The problem is some boats have 2 holes in front of the screw, and some boats have 1 hole in front of the screw. So count everything from the first screw back. Should make you feel better about how they built the boats,
No, I-
for sure.
What about
I
hiking?
think we have a Friday vote.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I'm
Okay,
surprised
so
they
there's
haven't
some
called
difference
park
in
yet.
hiking styles.
Yeah.
No,
I would say
no,
the guys on the left seem to be more butts in, probably, like inboard, shoulders leaned out a little bit. The guys on the right seem to be more of what I call the pencil hiking. So they've kind of scooted their butts outboard and their shoulders in and are a little bit more in a line. Probably less comfortable. It's faster.
I like it when people have their butts out more, but, they're just doing
It's
it.
less drag if you have butt out more, right?
That's right.
More slim.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the full pencil, so that's the call on our boat is to go to full pencil or, you know, like when I want more hiking, I say full pencil.
Alan might have been.
So tell me what that means again. That means you slid your butt
Yeah.
out further?
Yeah, in my opinion, the fastest way to hike is as if you're trying to slide out underneath the lifeline, so your whole body is in line, if you can get like your cheeks on the rail.
Yeah, it's basically like your tailbone.
So your shoulders, you can't have your shoulders outside the shear, no
Right.
matter what. So if you're gonna have your shoulders at the shear, your butt's gonna be inboard, more weight to the inboard. If you do one of these, your shoulders should be in the same place above the shear. I'm trying so hard not to fall off this chair. Butt is gonna be further outboard, giving you more riding
It
moment.
also hurts your ribs pretty bad.
Hurts
too.
more.
Well,
You might
and-
drag
Put a
your
life jacket on.
feet is a problem if you're at the right heel angle, and that's what Alan was saying before. Like really good legs over people are saying like my feet aren't wet anymore. You guys are probably going sideways. If your feet are dragging from time to time, you're at a closer heel angle. Sorry, depends on your height, of course. We're talking about the pencil height versus the non-pencil
And the
height.
height of your driver,
Yeah, I mean, I
and if
think
they can
a
see
lot of it
around
is
you.
You gotta
'cause-
get, you know,
can't
there's
see.
a fine line, we talk about it with, like Bill and I talk about all the time about being more vertical versus butt in and leaning back is the lifeline's on.
Yeah. And it's a good point about the driver view as well.
That's
That's a
a
really
big
good point.
deal. Like I quit driving the boat because I could never see.
Yeah.
Like I'm so short that I can't see, where I see over the bow is so far in front of where I needed to see. So like if it was a little lighter and I could sort of sit with my leg tucked under me,
Yeah.
world of difference.
Yeah.
But I cannot see. I can barely see over the cabin top.
This is a silly thing that like Hardesty actually told me to as a driver, and I don't do this enough, but I try to make like a conscious effort, like if the boat's starting to heel over, or if we're in kind of like a marginal, like it's getting windy condition, trying to actually drive with my feet tucked underneath me. He's like, put your feet underneath you, they're further out, the boat will be flatter, and I'm just like, but I might fall in the boat, but I actually like make a conscious effort to try and like drag my feet to windward, because it's like, you think about it. That's probably, that weighs a fair amount probably. So, I don't know.
Same thing with John.
Bill said the same thing to John, and he did not like it.
You have to
Bill said
engage your
John for
core
like
more. I mean, you
5
get more
minutes, and
tired.
That was
Yeah.
a big thing.
I mean, it was like,
Really?
put your feet underneath you, Kate.
Downwind, for sure, getting like
Yeah.
more riding mode when it's windy and you're planing. I actually tried for like a race one time to go upwind as the legs in main trimmer with one leg up like